Hi, everyone. I'm Carli.
And I'm Sophia.
And this is Away She Goes, a podcast from Girls Who Travel.
Each episode will help you feed your wanderlust with travel tips, stories, inspiration, and more. Away she goes. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Away She Goes. Today, Carli and I are joined by the amazing Maartje, who will tell us a lot about the book that she co-wrote. Hi, Maartje.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We're really glad to have you. Would you like to start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Maartje Hensen. I use she and they pronouns. I'm a traveler, I'm queer, I'm a writer, photographer, and, well, recently, published author, I guess.
Amazing. Congratulations. It's your first book?
It is. Yeah, it is. Oh, and I'm also I'm from the Netherlands, by the way. You can probably, hear a little bit of an accent.
Yay, we're neighbors. Would you like to start also tell us something about your book, The Pride Atlas? I sadly haven't gotten around to reading it yet, but it's high on my to-read list.
Yeah, so The Pride Atlas is kind of like a ultimate guidebook for queer travelers and, also, of course, allies. It's just a book, it's very colorful. There's a lot of pictures, but there's also helpful text about 500 destinations, events, queer-owned businesses, like memorials all around the world that are meaningful for the queer community. And it's also intersectional, so it's not just queer stuff. There's also black prides in there, indigenous prides. I just really wanted to be a book by and for the community. I'm also not the only writer. I have a beautiful team of other writers that wrote it with me, because of course my perspective is only, and my experience as a traveler is only one side of things, because I am white and I am, assigned female at birth, and that's just a certain experience. You go through life and I guess travel, and other experiences are very different. So I wanted that to be reflected in the book as well. It just goes beyond pride events. I think, of course, there's many pride events in there because they're also awesome. But of course, not every queer person is super into pride and big crowds. Myself, I get a little overwhelmed and overstimulated with big crowds and everything. So when I travel, I also want to, explore nature and maybe some queer-owned bookstores where hopefully you can all buy the book. I think not everything in the book is for everyone, but there's something for everyone in the book.
Nice.
How did you come about the process of starting? I know obviously you said there was a whole team of people other than you, but how did the whole thought kind of initially come about? Hey, we should create this. What did that look like?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting story. I'm kind of, starting to believe that there's something bigger or something. So in during one of the lockdowns, I was approached by a Dutch publisher who was like, "Oh, lots of people are writing travel books now. Maybe if you ever have an idea, let me know." And then I was like, "I don't know." My grandpa, always asks me "When are you going to write a book?" And I'm like, "I don't know. What would I write about?" Kind of stupid. It was kind of clear I already started a queer travel blog and sharing my experiences as a queer traveler. So it kind of would make sense to write a book like that. But it just didn't fully get to me yet. So about a year later or something, finally it came to me and I was like, it needs to be a queer travel book. It needs to be, personal, but also inspirational. It needs to help people. I know when I started traveling and started sharing my experiences with my former partner, that there were so many people who were they wanted to do what we already did, but they didn't know how to, get started. How do you even book a double bed? How is it, in different countries? How do you know when that's okay? How do you know if that's safe? So I think from that experience, this kind of felt like something, that's kind of why I do what I do. So this Dutch publisher didn't want my book. I had the whole pitch and it was like, oh, this is very elaborate. You thought about like a lot of things already. But then they were like, well, we have some questions. And I think maybe like an owner from a queer bookstore told me like this may have been from higher up, but they're still, not ready to publish something like this.
That sucks.
And then, yeah, it really does. And then I was also like, I mean, of course, I don't want to be working with someone who's not excited about the idea. Like, to my knowledge, there's not something like this out there. But please correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I don't want to like step on anyone's, achievement. And then about a month later, I get this email from a British publisher, and they are basically pitching my pitch to me. They're looking for a writer. And this is one of those moments where I'm like, how is this possible? I don't know, like some people told me, like it's probably meant to be and whatever. And I guess maybe it was just, I already had all the ideas, I mean, of course, like first I was going to write it in Dutch and, on like a different scale, but I was like, I actually know more people internationally. This actually makes a lot more sense. My blog is also in English. Like, so yeah, maybe it was meant to be. And then, so I was like, immediately, like when I got the email, I think like within 10 minutes I replied, I'm like, this is crazy. I already have so many ideas. Like, let's hop on a call right now and let's, go with this. And like the publisher was so open to all of my ideas. I mean, I had a lot of feedback throughout the entire process. There were definitely some ideas they had that I was like, well, we're not going to do that. And we are going to do this. And I need another like sensitivity reader going over it at the end. And, I want to pick the contributors. It was such a joy to work with them. Like they did have the kind of format, like already, like they have a similar format book that they published before, which was also good for me. So it was kind of, I had some, well, not boundaries, but like I knew what to work with. Like otherwise I can, go all over the place and the book would not have been here by this time.
That is so cool. That sounds a bit like a fairy tale kind of.
Yeah, just meant to be. Perfect.
Yeah, that's very interesting because my blog is called Once Upon a Journey. So there's definitely a fairy tale aspect, into all of this. Yeah.
So the next kind of section, the next thing we want to discuss is something that I'm sure you know a lot about, is destinations that might be safer versus unsafe. Now, I want to preface this with, we are not out here trying to diss anybody. We're not here trying to crap on certain countries or certain cultures or anything like that at all. But it is common knowledge, I think, that some countries, some areas of the world are safer and some are not. So this is purely educational. We are not trying to crap on anybody, like I said. So with that,
we're just looking out for our LGBTQ plus
exactly. What do you consider, or what have you found are some of the safer destinations? Maybe there's one that we wouldn't expect. Do we hear that and be like, oh, I didn't know that? What have you found?
Yeah, so I also want to like tap into that a little bit, what you said earlier, about like some countries that are not being very welcoming. There's also a part that I really wanted to be clear on in the book. There's a section in the back about like decolonizing travel, because I think this is something important to address. Like the countries that still have a lot of anti-LGBT laws in place. Those laws come from colonization. So, and it's also actually a lot of indigenous cultures worldwide were actually a lot more fluid, and like there wasn't like such a gender binary, or like there were different forms, and like that's not even possible to explain in Western terms. So I do want to address that. We did have to make the decision for the book to, I do not want to advise people to go to places where they might, risk getting jailed or something. But yeah, it is something that it's very, like, it's not a very easy thing to say, like, oh, we can never go there because it's illegal there, because there's just so much more at play there. So that said, there are like ways to find out, like legislation wise, what safe countries are. There's like the Gay Travel Index, which increasingly includes a lot more aspects of the queer community. First, it was very gay, like white male, and now they are including a lot more factors for the entire LGBT community. A lot of European countries are on that list, but a lot of South American countries have also been like increasingly becoming more welcoming. And for example, Taiwan, I think for me, I went to Taiwan in 2017 or 2018, which to me was a very surprising destination because I don't feel like there's a lot of talk about how welcoming it is. But when I was there, I saw queer couples like just out and proud, walking hand in hand, and in general, like not in all cultures, like PDA is a big thing. So like already seeing PDA and public display of affection, and also seeing queer couples do that, like that just makes me so happy. And it's funny because people sometimes think, oh, it's where the biggest pride event is or something, or where they are, like screaming the loudest that they're friendly. Like sometimes it's really destinations where it's the small things, when you book a double bed in a hotel, like they're not looking at you weirdly when you say you have a double bed. Like for a traveler, I think it's not all the big things, it's really the small things that make a destination feel safe. Yeah, and I guess also it really depends on what kind of traveler you are, what kind of person you are, how you present yourself, like what destinations would be more friendly. So that's a hard question to answer.
It is. Do you
and
have...
I would not have guessed Taiwan.
I wouldn't have either. That was very unexpected. Do you have a personal favorite destination?
Yeah, I would always want to come back to Thailand and Mexico. Those places really stole my heart. And I mean, there's also many, like I still have many places to travel to, because I also like returning to destinations. And to me, it's not about, like traveling everywhere and like just crossing off countries of my list or something. So I hope to get to South America later this year. And I'm very, very excited to explore that part of the world more.
When we talk about unsafe destinations, and again, we're not going to sit here naming specific countries or anything like that, but what are some things that, if a traveler is doing their research, what are some things maybe to look out for? What are some things that might clue you in as to whether or not a destination is safe for you to go to?
Yeah, so I think most people first look up the laws, and I do want to say that, of course, that's a big part, like especially if like, can I get be sent to prison or something for being gay? Like that is definitely something to look out for. But that said, I also want to say that people don't equal laws, and like social opinion doesn't always match like the legislation of a country. Legislation is not always enforced. I mean, I do not say that like people should go to unsafe destinations, like do what feels comfortable to you, but like it depends what the purpose of your travel is. I mean, of course, on a honeymoon, you want to be like super comfortable and safe, and you don't want to have like any weird questions and like think about that at all. But you might want to see places. I mean, if you were looking at the 7 like world wonders, I mean, so many of them are in countries that are not like LGBT friendly. So yeah, if that would be something you're comfortable with, in order to see those places, it just depends on your intention. Yeah. So, and I think for me, it's been surprising that also in destinations where I thought it would be, I really would need to go back in a closet and hide myself. And then, of course, I have all these Western ideas of like what it looks like when you're a couple, like girls hand in hand, like that's a coupley thing to do. But then in some other cultures, that's just what friends do. And also in some very like homophobic countries, it's where men, kiss each other and like hug. And like, so also in that sense, it's been surprising to also learn that your own framework, like it's sometimes setting you a bit up for maybe failure, or there's just so many more ways to do life and to show affection or not. Like also in places like public display of affection can is considered like indecent behavior for everyone. So
For
it's not
everybody,
just,
right?
yeah, so it's not
Yeah.
just for queer people. So I feel like that's also been a very surprising, also the idea of like gender roles. I mean, you have some ideas of, like, I don't know, like, the old fashioned traditional things about gender. And then in other cultures, they might not know like in what category you fit if you dress androgynously or like present yourself androgynously. And I guess we then sometimes have this fear that, they're going to be harmful. But in other cultures, sometimes it's just like, oh, just tell me what you're comfortable with. And they're like, okay, that's it.
That's good to know. Talking about unsafe places, I'm thinking about what can allies do to help? Like, would it even be a good idea to boycott places that are unsafe? Or are there other things or things that make more
Yeah.
sense to do?
I'm not so sure if boycotting can definitely be efficient, but that has to be done on such a large scale in order for it to be efficient. I'm not sure if that's helpful. And definitely, like, I also want to say there's queer people everywhere. There's even if they're not visible, like there are queer scenes everywhere. Like the community has a way of finding each other, also in places where it's very, very dangerous. So I also want to, if you're talking about boycott, like you're definitely not helping the local queer community. And definitely as allies, I think there's an extra layer of safety that like you travel with. There's privilege that you're extra layer of that you travel with. So I would say you can use that. You can find queer owned businesses, for example, like, and support those businesses, like connect with people if you can find them, like hear their stories, and also like broaden your own horizons. I've definitely met queer people like everywhere I go, and I have this whole idea from my perspective, but of course, from their perspective, the whole world is different. And yeah, just keep an open mind, and then also, yeah, share that with others, like your experiences. And I always think, like some people are scared to speak up and scared to say the wrong things. But if you can, you always shouldn't. I mean, you shouldn't be afraid to say the wrong things, because I mean, then people will tell you, like, hey, I think you can do this better. It's like, you don't lose anything in that sense, but you gain a lot of knowledge. And the community is pretty great. So and also grateful if you're like helping out in the right ways, and if it's not for like personal gain or anything. So I think, yeah, that's just, we all need to fight with love or something, I would say, instead of like fear. And that's just something, I mean, that's also something that's just very important to me, like connecting with people and connecting and like hearing their stories. And I think, as an ally, you really have an opportunity to like educate other people, but also learn from other people, and like help spread the word, like, and help amplify voices that are marginalized and like are unheard. Especially also like amongst like other, like if you're out with your straight friends or something, and like maybe go to a gay bar at some point, like not to be like, oh, crazy bachelorette party or something, but to really immerse yourself and like learn and connect. And I think most of the hate comes from like not understanding, not knowing like the otherness of people. But once you really get to know people, like we're all people, and also queer people, like we are as diverse as straight people. So yeah, I would say that if you have the possibility to do that on your travels, um do that.
I like that. I really like that. Also,
That's good
I'm going
advice.
to London before this airs, and there's this bookshop called Gaze the Word. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll definitely go there, and maybe I'll even find your book there, and then I can get it, because
Yes.
like
There you
like
go.
you said, when I looked at it online, it looked so pretty, and like, what's the point getting it on e-reader?
Oh
Yeah.
no, you need a physical
Like a
copy.
waste of beauty.
Yeah, it's also like it's a proper like sized book, like it's
There you go.
Yes, I
really
love those.
it's hardcover, it's very heavy. Like I've been dragging this around like everywhere, and like every time I'm like, I don't think this is good for my back, but
Okay, you're gonna laugh because I have a bunch of that size book, like travel books, and I'm using them to prop up my microphone right now so that it's up at face level with me. So I'm a fan of those kind of books. I do read them also.
That's
I don't
awesome.
just use them. I don't just use them to prop my mic up, but they come in handy. I just had
multi-purpose. Yeah.
I just had a college. I'm taking master's courses part-time, and my course just ended for the semester. So I'm like, I can't use my textbooks anymore because I returned them. So I had to pivot. To my travel books.
Yeah.
So personally, I know we already kind of talked about your favorite destination. What are some maybe of the best cultural destinations or events other than like local pride parades and that kind of thing that you recommend people visit if they are able to?
I think there are quite some queer memorials around the world. I always think like if you're in a city, it's worth looking up if there's, I mean, it's definitely like on the heavy side of things, but I think that's also important. Like on the pride side of things, you see a lot of joy, and which is also very important. But I think there's also a lot of history that should not be forgotten, and it's the reason why we needed pride. You know, a lot of bad things have happened, and then I think also there's a lot of memorials and street art, like from by and for queer artists, and with like a meaning behind it. I think also going to queer-owned businesses, there's like a whole worldwide map where queer-owned businesses can add themselves. It's called Everywhere is Queer, and I highly recommend like you looking up places like that. I mean, you have, when you spend money, you have the power, you know, to support certain kinds of businesses, and I think it's always very nice to support queer-owned businesses and like other marginalized communities with your money, like very directly, you know, supporting someone's life.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. I think all of this is really great advice. I think this is something that everybody should hear and should understand and should think about. You know, I think a lot of people don't think about these things. And for some people, they're very real. And it's something, you know, when you plan a trip, you have to consider these things. You can't just book a trip and go wherever and not, you know, not think about it. So we really appreciate you coming on. Would you mind sharing with our listeners where they can find you on the internet, where they can purchase your book if they're interested?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me again. You can find the Pride Atlas at the Pride Atlas on Instagram. You can find me at Maartje Hensen. I mean, maybe first go to the Pride Atlas and see how my name is spelled. And you can go to prideatlas.com to get your copy, to write a review, you know, get the support and find the other channels. And my blog is onceuponajourney.com.
Perfect. And listeners, we will have all of this linked in the episode description to make it as quick and easy as possible.
That's great, especially because my name is hard.
That's all for this episode. If you'd like more Away She Goes in your life, make sure to stop by girlswhotravel.org/podcast. That's where you can fill out a form if you're interested in being a guest on the show. You can also write to us at awayshegosgwt@gmail.com or leave us a message on our Google voicemail from any phone or computer at 1-563-503-6323. To follow our adventures, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Carli Sees the World. Carli is spelled Carli.
You can also follow me at Sophia AEZ, Sophia with a PH. Away She Goes is part of Girls Who Travel, a community dedicated to radically redefining travel to be inclusive, sustainable, and empowering. You can learn more about GWT, find travel tips and support, shop travel-themed items made by GWT members, and join our Facebook group with nearly 100,000 women all around the world at girlswhotravel.org. We can't wait to connect and explore with you. Away she goes.